Like many other towns across the county and across the country, Corsham has been most aware of its World War I history through its annual war parade and through its war memorials. And like lots of others, Corsham has used the centenary years of 2014 to 2019 to look back at that history and to learn the part that the town and its people played 100 years ago. For that research work, we've been lucky enough to have a war records book that was published in 1921 that listed the names of 700 men and women that took part in the war and played some role. And we've used that then as a starting point to go off and to do more online research, using ancestry records, using military records, and using detail that we found in the Wiltshire and Swindon History Centre. Period newspapers have also allowed us to find out more detail. They've been a rich source of information, as have the photographs of Herbert Spackman, a local photographer who lived on the High Street and documented much of what went on at the time. For me, most strikingly, the enthusiasm and energy of the town is best borne out by the support that they showed for the Red Cross Hospital that was set up in what is now the town hall. And these are stories that are individually very ordinary, but collectively they're extraordinary, and it showed the story of how Corsham and its people went above and beyond. We remember the story of Corsham annually at the Remembrance Parade where names are read out. But through the research, what we've been able to do is to find out more about the men behind the names. In most cases, we found that the men that went away had been at school just a few years before in Corsham. They'd lived in Corsham, they'd grown up in Corsham, and probably the first time they left Corsham was to join the forces. And there were some very young men like Archie Gain. He was only 16 when he went away. He was a boy soldier on board HMS Bulwark, when unfortunately was involved in an accident right at the start of the war, and he died when he was only 16. And men like Stanley Hancock, who was only 18 when he died. And then there were older men who felt that it was their duty to serve. Men like Percy Babington, who was a family man, who was a local groom. He was 34 when he signed up. And then we found the story of Eldred Wills. He was a gamekeeper here at Hartham Park. His family lived locally and continued to live locally. He was only 30 when he died in October 1918.
My name is Barry Pullin. Albert Allen, who is the first name on the Corsham War Memorial, is my great uncle. He was my grandmother's slightly older brother. And when I was a child, I remember my grandmother telling me about her older brother that was still missing in action somewhere in France. I served in the Royal Air Force for 34 years, and when I retired, it suddenly became more important to me to find out what had happened to him. So with the help of Ancestry and various cousins of my generation who knew bits of the story, I was able to piece it together. And actually, on one occasion in 2009, I stood in the field where Albert lost his life. I had no idea that a small market town tucked away in the wilds of Wiltshire had actually lost 121 young men.
The story of Corsham's World War I is most strikingly seen through the names of the men and through the men that we remember annually. But the story is deeper than that. It touched all aspects of Corsham's life. It involves the estate owners who provided leadership and provided facilities. It involved the churches where people came to mark the loss of their men. It came together in the quarries who gave up an awful lot of their staff. It came together in the amazing generosity and support of the ordinary people of Corsham. And all of this tells a whole story, a story that's had a light shine on it during these centenary years when we've been able to do more research. This is all about being looking back, but part of it is also about a commitment to the future and looking to the future. And in doing that, the War Memorial has been renovated. We have published a new War Records book, bringing together the very short biographies of all of the men. We've had the Batters Field recognised as a commemorative field. And I think, most pleasingly, we've involved the young people and the children in the town. And they've been able to be part of that story and tell their own stories with their own grandparents. And that's, I think, has been an important part of what we've done.
I think the work of the Royal British Legion and the various other service organisations is tremendously important. But I think it's up to people like yourself and myself and our generation to educate our children and grandchildren about our family history. Because these are not just names on war memorials, these are real people, and we should tell our children and grandchildren so they are never, ever forgotten.
All of that history and all of those remembrances come together now in the woodland that we're establishing here at Hartham Park. And I think it's most appropriate that we use Hartham Park. Hartham Park played its own part in the war. It was a supply depot. It was used by the ladies of the local village as a place where they came together to do sewing and knitting in support of the troops. And as one of the estates here, it supplied many men to the war itself. So it's appropriate that we're here. We're setting up a woodland. The woodland will comprise of 121 trees, marking the names of the 121 men that died during the war.
As time goes on and the trees grow, we hope that people will be able to come here and enjoy the space, enjoy the trees, enjoy the views, and importantly remember the individual and collective contributions and bravery of the men and of the whole of Corsham as a community.